And we deeply appreciate you being here, and you know the background, so I'll not go into the background of the fact that we need that we need to have industry and the government collaboration. And to set up the stage, we have taken up government measures and talked about where the government measure has had deep impact, driven by data. So what did we do? We looked at the policies of anti-dumping duties. There have been many policies around anti-dumping duties. It's bad for India, we are taking handicap industries, and so on and so forth. Our research shows that because of anti-dumping duties on only a few products, the economic value add to India has been 1,50,000 crores. Right? And that's the first report we are going to launch. The second report shows that because we have not put anti-dumping duty on a few products, there's an economic loss of 1,10,000 crores. So those are large numbers we're talking about. I think those numbers will be sufficient to convince that it's important to have anti-dumping duty to defend our industries from predatory pricing, from strategic attack, which impacts our industry. Let me give you a quick example. If you don't have KTP, small chemical, most of you would not know, will not be able to have our submarines go down, will not have our fighter pilots be up in the air, because KTP is stands for potassium tributylate, which helps release oxygen. Without that, submarines and your fighter pilots are not. It's as simple as that. Small little things, not very big chemicals. Similarly, in pharmaceuticals. So our point was that there is a lot of views. Let's do some scientific research and come out with the impact of KTP, and that's what these reports are, along with some Center for WTO Studies and Forum for Integrated National Security. The Center for Domestic Economic Policy Research has done this report, so we'll go ahead and release it. Over to you, SIT, and everyone please hold the report and we can release it. Talks about the fact that government intervention helps 1,50,000 crores in economic benefit. The darker one, because the number is very dark, shows that we lost a lot of money because we didn't take action on anti-dumping duties. All these reports you will find on C-DEP website. This is releasing the two reports. Thank you. Thank you. So I would like to thank Shri Amit Agarwal for raising this discussion. I would request for the bouquet to be brought in, which the General Secretary of Forum for Integrated National Security, Advocate Bal Desai will be presenting to the Secretary. So as was requested by the Secretary Pharmaceuticals, this is completely focused on the issues of industry and government and how we can work together. So we'll not be going into numbers of how big the industry is, of niceties of lighting the lamp and so on, which are important because we are carrying the lamp. Each one of is a lamp, and I hope all of these lamps are lighted. Now we all are standing at a stage where we know we have done well in terms of pharmaceuticals and medical devices. We know that we are one of the leaders in the world, but we also know that we still have much more to cover, and that we are still getting threatened in terms of our supply chain resilience, in terms of our dependencies on other nations for critical products that complete our supply chain. There's a term, pharmaceutical sovereignty, on which we are having this round table, which has the blessings of the Secretary. In fact, we picked it up from his ideas and his views. And the view is very simple. Can our inability to secure our supply chain be used to undermine the will of the government? Can the government's arm be twisted because we don't have full control of our supply chain? Now we all know what the issues we are talking about. We know that we don't have control over APIs. We know we don't have control over our key starting materials and so on and so forth. Therefore, what is it that we can do together in order to fill this gap, in order to move forward? And not just that, we are a responsible country, and that was demonstrated during COVID, where as part of the vaccine Maitri, we provided vaccines to much of the world. And therefore, it's our responsibility to continue to provide not just vaccines, but medicines, pharmaceuticals, formulations to the rest of the world. So now, without much ado, I'll start with a very short presentation based on all the inputs all of you have given. You might find that some of the points you've given is not there. That doesn't mean much. It's just that we are picking up the themes and clubbing them. And so what we would do as part of the discussions is, once you have presented these points, and I would request each one of you to go through the details and flesh out what we're going to talk about. Anushka, are you having a challenge? Just go to...
I'm just connecting Dr. Krishna.
Okay, he's going to join 10 minutes later. So maybe we can start and you connect. Okay, why don't you connect first? Go ahead. Yes. Good evening. Yeah, I'll just give the phone to... So we got Dr. Krishnala also coming in. He was trying to join in person, but he couldn't because of his other commitments. So coming back, as we were talking about, it's a roundtable on securing pharmaceutical sovereignty. We explained the concept of sovereignty. So, Anushka, can you go to the previous presentation?
We dim some of the lights at that time, if possible.
Could we have the lights dim, please, on that side? Although this is the only presentation, and perhaps there may be a presentation from Dr. Krishnala, this is more of discussions. So we'll start with this short presentation that we're going to talk about. It will not take 15 minutes, it will take much less than that. We'll then have the chair's initial reaction, and to hear from him all the steps that the government has already taken. And therefore, that's enough please. We don't need any more lights. And once we hear from the chair, we will go around the table. Some of the delegates, and I'll call out the names, have had detailed discussions with us, and will probably take a little more time than others to explain what the issues are. So they'll take about 10 minutes to explain the issues. Welcome, sir. You can find your name tag and you can join in. And then we'll go to the rest of the delegates to have...
Sorry.
So then we'll go to the rest of the delegates and have their interventions and understand what are the suggestions that would make the industry work better and suggestions which are implementable. Now all of us understand how industry works, all of us understand how academia works, all of us understand how the government works.
So the last was not a good.
The government and universe works in strange ways, okay. But yes, I think largely we know that all of us work in constraints. So respecting that, what we're looking forward to is implementable suggestions which can be taken forward, followed up. So it's not, should not be the end of the conversation, as we always promise, but fortunately when C-DEP and FINS is involved, we take things forward for the rest of the year and ensure that implementable issues are taken forward and there is a logical end and conclusion to those suggestions. Next slide, please. So the objectives of the roundtable, there are 3 key objectives. How India can scale up its domestic bulk drug manufacturing capacities, especially in APIs, KSMs and vaccine raw materials. We all know we are a little bit challenged. In fact, Dr. Krishna, who's waiting on the other side, is very passionate about the last one. And then to explore challenges and possible policy challenges needed for shifting manufacturing of medical devices to India. You'll find your name tag and just grab that chair. So medical devices is again a place where we are not very strong, and therefore that's something that needs to be strengthened in the country. And finally, how to increase pharmaceutical and medical device exports. Now we are big in pharmaceutical exports. We also need to be big in medical device exports, and the two together helps us build up the heft and the volumes needed to play in global scales. So the bigger we are, the cheaper we are, and therefore the larger marketplace we will get. It becomes a virtuous cycle. These are techniques that have been used by China. We all know, it's an open book. We all on this table know what China has done. There is ample reason to copy that. And that's the strategy that has been followed by many corporations, even in India. How can we do it at a national scale where we can expand our capacities, bring down the per unit cost, and therefore get a larger share of the global market. Anushka, next slide, please. And therefore, the high-level discussion points that has been given by the industry, which we will then discuss in the next 1 hour 45 minutes, is domestic production and import substitution. How can India scale domestic capacities for critical first-level derivatives currently sourced from China? There's no other country, right? We're talking about China, so let's be blunt and clear about it. How do we make sure that we are protected? Next time we have an issue with our friendly neighbors on the western side, our friendly neighbors on the northern side can twist our arms on just medicines. As you all know, penicillin G is something that the government has really worked on. Penicillin G is critical for our soldiers. If you have a nick or a cut, you are supposed to, as per the protocol, have a penicillin G if you're a soldier. And without that, while the army is fighting in the fronts, we as an industry will let them down. So we should not do that. Tackling predatory pricing and supply vulnerabilities, how can we improve end-to-end control over key intermediates, which includes issues such as obviously anti-dumping duty, for which we released the 2 reports. It showed that by putting anti-dumping duties, there was enormous economic benefits to the extent of 1,50,000 crore. Similarly, there are acceptable WTO aligned tools such as QCO, QR, and so on. And then there are other tools such as MIP. How is it that we can use it in an effective and efficient manner? Could PLI scheme be recalibrated to support medium-sized pharma enterprises? One of you has flagged it. So we'll go deeper into what the thought behind this is. Then greenfield infrastructure and ecosystem enablers, exploring plug-and-play manufacturing zones with common utilities for APIs and medical devices. The government has already taken initiatives, and we'll hear from the secretary. Let's see what is it that the industry is saying that we can do better, or the government can do better. What is the rationalization needed in taxation structures for medical devices? How can taxes be used as a nudge to ensure that there is a larger medical device industry in the country? How or what HS code harmonization and product classification clarity is required? This is an issue that has been flagged by the industry. Let's see what is the details of this particular issue. Next slide. Formulations, APIs and pharmaceutical security, pharmaceutical resilience. How do we ensure long-term access to essential APIs and KSMs and the upstreams? We know about 12, 13, 14 years back, in fact actually 16, 17 years back, most of our API capacities was decimated by dumping. By the time help was sought, it was too late. Can we revive it? Can we expand it? And can we therefore safeguard it from future such attacks? What frameworks are needed for fostering innovation in synthesis and process technology through stronger industry-academia collaboration? What are these collaborations that we're talking about? PLI and bulk drug park reforms, strengthening PLI and bulk drug park reforms. I'll go a little faster. We all know what this issue is. We want to hear what is it that the industry is talking about. Those who are taking pictures, will put it on our website so you can simply download it, right? Strengthening PLI and bulk drugs, then exploring financial and tax instruments that could better incentivize increased investment in pharmaceutical R&D. We all know the issues around tax instruments for increased innovation and R&D. What are the challenges? What are the suspicions around it? So let's hear what is a robust mechanism that we can therefore propose. You want to say something, sir?
On this or?
No, we can finish it in one more. Next slide, please. And I think that's the last one, I believe, right? Next slide. Yeah, this one. So exports and global market access, facilitating global compliance through alignment with international certification frameworks. Example, MDSAP. Sridat, in case they're short of chairs, we can get it from outside. How to streamline export clearances and NOC processes to reduce delays and uncertainty. What improvement is needed in logistics and payment systems to support pharma and device exports, especially for MSMEs. I don't know how many MSMEs are getting represented on this table, and that's the challenge. So I think it will be the responsibility of the industry associations to ensure that the MSME voices are also heard, because obviously their challenges are different. Obviously kind of support, and with MSME you also mean startups. They kind of go hand in hand, right? What improvement is needed in logistics and payment systems to support pharma and device exports? I personally couldn't understand the payment systems part, but I'm sure whoever suggested that can go deeper into that aspect. What strategies can strengthen India's global footprint in medical devices, including improved market access, alignment with international standards, and enhanced participation in global medtech platforms? Coming to regulatory and policy tweaks, how can regulatory processes for medical devices be better harmonized, reduce overlap, ensure timely approvals, and build long-term confidence among domestic manufacturers and investors? Next slide. And this is the last slide. So strategic trade positioning, can India build global partnerships to create a diversified and resilient pharma supply chain? Do we need that? How is it to be built up? In light of global trade shifts, what supportive measures can help Indian MSMEs navigate pricing pressures and maintain competitiveness against heavily subsidized imports? Also the fact that there are geoeconomic shifts happening, massive geoeconomic shifts happening. How can we take advantage of it? We kept hearing about China +1, and now there is a plus US kind of an opportunity. How can we leverage those opportunities? Last point is to promote innovation. Very, very critical for our industry. Aligning regulations to global best practices to enable Indian startups and innovation to compete globally. So you can come to the last slide so that we know we are done, and maybe go back to the first one so that it gives the background, or maybe stop it so that if Dr. Ella is there, he can see us and we can see them. So with that, I'll hand over the dais to the secretary and hear his views. So you can use that.
Thanks, Tejit, and thanks everybody who's taken the time out for today's roundtable. I go back to the topic, and let me remind for those who are looking at the slides very closely, those are not our prescriptions. That was a summary of what each of you contributed in advance of the meeting. So we can discuss or take forward those or other things. What I would like on those, or what we should be doing, is more as something that I would like to hear from all of you as part of the roundtable. What I would like to touch upon is why are we having this roundtable as I see it, and why is it opportune, and what is really the set of issues and concerns, priorities, opportunities, etc. around it, and what does it mean as a beginning. So that is primarily what I would like to touch upon in my initial opening of the roundtable. Let's look at the topic. I mean, strengthening Atmanirbharta, achieving industrial sovereignty. So Atmanirbharta, we understand that self-reliance, and there are a lot of reasons. It's been well articulated by the government. Those of you If you recall, what was the context where we started talking about Atmanirbhar? That was in the midst of COVID, and where the Indian government took a very clear policy stance that, along with the challenges, let's also seize the opportunity for building a more resilient future. And that was basically which was a bold policy initiative, and across the board it was manifested in many ways. The PLI schemes were one set of things, there were a bunch of reforms, etc., and other things. Sovereignty is a particular strand of that, but sovereignty is in a sense more strategic and political. Sovereignty at one level is whatever is the legal definition. Sovereignty is the ability of a nation not only de jure but de facto to really determine its choices and to how it runs things. As a country, it's not just about government. I mean, in political theory, it's about government, it's about the state and the government of that country. But here we are talking about sovereignty. We are talking about sovereignty of India as a nation, all of us as citizens, as businesses in India, the government, every stakeholder in this. Do we really have de facto, not only de jure, but de facto choices before us, which are really material? And sovereignty, therefore, is always a lot about both opportunities and risks and threats, and it has to be thought of over the longer term. It's not just a business decision for today or so on. The world has, of course, huge tectonic shifts have happened from broadly the time around the COVID. I would say three major changes come to my mind of how the world has changed. One, the pandemic has shown what is the degree of supply chain risks that may exist, and it has put in sharp focus this for not just for us but for everybody. Second, the world has moved from a consensus more or less earlier on globalization to a lot of protectionism, and consequently a lot of deal making of a very aggressive kind in both trade and investment and technology in every other sphere. And the third thing which has changed is we've seen weaponization of every kind of resource or a strength a country has or a vulnerability a country has. I need not name the list. And here we have both kinds of, so these three things. So basically, the world, I would say, in the present decade, in the last 5 years, has very visibly changed. The environment has changed. It has changed not just for governments and nations, it has changed for businesses also. Businesses and business associations need to recognize this shift and change and factor it into their policies and their own business strategy, not the country's strategy. When I am saying the strategy of a nation, when I say not just of the government, is of all stakeholders. And industry is very central to it. Pharmaceuticals are very central to it. When we talk about industry, what is an industry at a very fundamental first principles level do? An industry, first of all, gives us the ability to provide for the needs of a nation, be it the needs of individuals, people, or the economic needs of businesses and so on. At another level, that's today, beyond needs, the future. So greater well-being of the people, whether it is in the case of pharma and more of health well-being, affordability, etc., and then economic well-being equally of individuals, and then again prosperity of the nation. And finally, it comes to the strategic things that as a country can we move and chart out courses or avoid certain courses or face with certain situations. Are we really equipped to do certain things? And that always has a defensive dimension as well as an offensive dimension. Especially the kind of deal making that one is seeing, or the kind of weaponization that is being in both the geo-economic and geopolitical spheres, and that may repeat and recur. Pandemics may recur, as we are saying, zoonotic disease profiles, everything is changing. So we are living in a world which is at a cusp also with these changes, that we are seeing large-scale geopolitical change of an unprecedented variety which has not been seen since World War II. NATO and other things, and the whole geopolitical environment, the geo-economic environment on the economic front, and on technology, on all three. And the pace of this change with technology and everything is just going to hasten. We're going to continue to live foreseeably, in the near term certainly, in a very uncertain environment. Now, when the environment is uncertain, one should be like in COVID, should not be only reactive and adaptive, one should also simultaneously think longer term. So that is my first request to each of you. You are all pursuing your business objectives and by all means do so. But this roundtable is more about taking a strategic view on things, and we need you two to have a sense of the strategy. Today, as a departmental secretary, I engage with the rest of the wider government. We are engaged in trade deals, investment deals. The EU negotiation has an investment chapter too. And in a globalized world, we would have investments coming in a free flow, and investment is always welcome. I mean, India can always do with more capital, and with capital also brings access in its own way to other markets. Capital along with it brings technology, it brings many things, and that's always welcome. But at the same time, if weaponization can happen or may happen, there are certain things we need to safeguard. If there are certain key industries that they are there, key suppliers which are there, are we totally okay with them also being on without any checks and balances, simply the ownership changes hand? Ownership doesn't matter so much, it's control, sovereign control which matters. Anybody is welcome to put in money into our country and our industries, including key ones. I mean, defense, we've said private defense production is welcome. That's not a problem. Question is, what are the conditions with which we bring it in? Now, what I find is, and when we sit on big trade deals with major partners, both in trading partners and potentially investment partners, we don't have a strategic perspective from the industry. On our part, we try to think for you and do that. But I think it would be a mistake for the industry not to develop a strategic vision also alongside a business vision. Because by the time deals are done, it may be too late to correct it. I mean, you signed an Indus Waters Treaty and you say, well, three rivers to the north yours, 4 rivers to the south mine. What's the sizing of the water quantum? We didn't give it a thought back then, and maybe that was all right, as even in hindsight we may say, yeah, that's the best thing you could have done at that point in time. But puts in sharp focus, maybe things could have been done a bit differently. So right now, when we are committed within this year to do major deals, early harvest included, is also the time for us to have a strategic perspective. When you represent to the government, if you can bring along with your business perspective a longer term strategic perspective also, that would be helpful to you, because unless that is there, that doesn't happen. And when we sit in a trade negotiation, in any of these negotiations, there are different associations I see here. There's a pharma association, there's a medical devices or medical technologies associations. But when we look at a sector by sector discussion, they are one. The opposing side, any deal will apply equally to both. You are not going to have separate sectoral deals for pharma and medical devices. So the other side negotiates as one. We don't present a collective view. For a strategy, we don't have collected data. We are not too large. We are 4th largest, going on to be for sure 3rd largest. If we are so important and we have so much of heft, we need to think differently. I mean, strategy for a country which is very weak doesn't really have much options, doesn't mean much. But we are too big and too important and too much at stake for us and for others in us for not to really have a strategy. So my first request to all of you is, think strategically. As associations internalize it, invest some resources in this thought process. We can try to think. Yes, it's the government's job to sit at the table and negotiate and to come out with policy. But after all, government also ultimately gets its inputs from somewhere. It gets its data, its insights from all of you. If you don't devote yourself to this and just leave it by default, I think you're doing yourself and your principles a disservice. I'm encouraging you to do so, and I think the time is now. It's not a long-term time that I'm speaking of. This roundtable is merely commencement of a process. The Department of Pharmaceuticals has primarily been conceived as viewed in the government too as an economic department, and that is fine. But alongside that, it is also now a strategic department. We've always looked at it as industry and business issues and never that of strategy. I think this sector is inherently strategical. As life sciences grows, as technology advances, both on the life sciences side and AI side and cyber security and other things, and our scale and importance go as we become more and more central to the global supply chains, as global fault lines in geoeconomics, geopolitics becomes sharpened, as our own size and importance in the scheme of things increases, the risks and the stakes become much more. So we need to start thinking differently, and therefore this roundtable is merely a process, a commencement of a process of engagement. It's not a one-off. It's to for us to socialize this idea that strategy besides business goals is also an objective. It's something we need to think about. So that's primarily the context I need to leave with all of you. Your set of initial thoughts help just set the array of potential things that may be there. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. That was, I think, provides a lot of clarity to all of us, isn't it? I think that helps us and gives us a lot of confidence that this is a new beginning or an acceleration of what was always on. And I think we should all contribute to the strategic thinking that the government is asking us for. With that, I'll move on to Dr. Krishna Ella, who has again been very kind to take out time to share his views for the next 15 minutes. Dr. Ella, over to you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I think I should introduce, or I don't know whether I need to introduce, Dr. Krishna Ella is the man who saved millions of lives in India because he created the Indian COVID vaccine. He's obviously the founder and managing director of Bharat Biotech, and we are grateful that he has been able to join us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Sir, I think I'm honored to be here, and I love to be there physically. How is my sound, sir? The sound is good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. The future, if you asked me 3 years back, I would not have predicted the future would be life science. Having changes happening in structural biology, the whole field of life science is changing. It's going to change biosimilar, it's going to change vaccine, it's going to drugs discovery of small molecules. Everything is going to change. In 5 years now, you're going to see totally new biosimilars, not what you're seeing in the world. The vaccines, you're going to see it totally different. So my perspective is going to be, as a startup company, I'm going to be a little, sometimes sarcastic and sometimes positive. So don't mistake me, that comes with, unfortunately, I'm getting into 70, my age, getting to 70. So you have sarcasm comes in, unfortunately. You can see the slide, sir?
Yeah, we.
Yes, we can. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I think, honored, sir, Amit Agarwal, sir, and I sincerely wish you all the best, and something happens for the country, and we are really looking forward to that. I'm going to talk a very complicated subject, and I'm going to tell few my examples, which will exemplify, which will give me substantial answer why our regulatory hurdles are not right in the country. Okay, so I'll give some example, not to promote my company, but to a few examples. And I think I've grown through the public-private partnerships. I've learned the clinical trial research, Indo-US WAP program. Why the echo sound is coming?
Yes.
Okay.
They have to mute from this.
So you have any echo sounds there?
They have to mute.
No, we don't, but can you mute your side?
You can mute there if you can go.
Yes.
Now you can hear now, proper?
Yeah, unmute on my side. Yes, we can. Now we'll mute it.
Yeah, then if you mute that, you'll not get it. Public-private partnership. And I think, sir, I think I was a startup 1997. So nobody can talk better than me being a startup of 97. I'm not a business family, I'm a scientist turned into a startup. So what my dream is, our next generation is to stay back in India. And how do you create the regulatory system is all in our hands. And I was involved from Mashalka committee onwards, from 1999 onwards. I have seen so many committees in my life in the last 25 years. And to say a few things was not a good story about it. And I'll tell you why that is so. And whatever I'm saying is to make sustainable for the life science startups to survive in this country. If they don't survive, we are not going to have innovation. Big companies will never create innovation. It is only small startups which will go to create innovation. And I think, prior 2019, Africa, only 2 manufacturers. After 2019 pandemic, 23 manufacturers. Actually, it is now touching 28 manufacturers. China had 8 manufacturers, now 25 manufacturers. South Korea, 3 manufacturers, now 8 manufacturers. Everything changed after the pandemic. Everything changed. And I think you look at the governments, you look at all the federal governments, of the US FDA, MHRA, EMA, China has got only one single window, SFDA, and Brazil has got one single window. Whereas India, we have 4 ministries to handle. I don't have fortunately, we don't have pharma ministry in this. So it's only Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Environment and Science and Technology, Ministry of Commerce. And I think, unfortunately, vaccine manufacturing, biosimilar manufacturing, nobody wants it. Although DBT claims, but they are more R&D facilitator, not a manufacturing facilitator. So there's a difference in that. And I think, these are very simple, sir. I don't want to touch upon all this thing. And I think Jayajit can give some of the slides. And Indian regulatory, you see there's so many committees. Absolutely, this is the only country in the world has got so many committees. Nowhere else. And look at state regulatory. Again, from drawing a local politician, local sarpanch, he is more powerful than the minister of the state. And when we want to say Atmanirbhar to succeed, unless we change all this regulatory system at the ground level, we are not going to succeed. It will be a talk. We will need to change the ground realities of this, including local weight and measurement. He is also a regulatory body in the manufacturing companies, including national biodiversity, local chapters. There's so many. I don't want to mention, but and I think what is important is I'm going to touch upon some of the regulatory clinical research that my experience. And we are the only company in the developing world, including China and over Korea, 4 efficacy, 3 effectiveness studies conducted globally. No other company, vaccine company, have done this sort of efficacy and effectiveness, including biosimilar companies, both China and Korean companies or Indian companies. And I think I want to touch, we made a first new molecule. When we made a typhoid conjugate first time in the world, the Gates Foundation said, you conducted a clinical trial where antibiotic abuse. We can't believe a clinical trial. This first skepticism started when you develop a new molecule. That itself started a problem, not trusting a clinical trial. So then Gates Foundation funded us human challenge studies. In Oxford, we got it. But this UK MHRA approval, I got it in less than 45 days. UK MHRA approval. Phase 2B. If I want to do human challenge studies in India, it's impossible, number 1. If you want to do it also, it will take 5 to 7 years. Whereas I got it in 45 days, my trial was over in less than 5-6 months. Including 125 people recruitment, including insurance, which we have to take from India for the insuring those people. So that is thanks to Gates Foundation, we funded $20 million grant. And then when an Indian vaccine company wanted to develop a new molecule, they created another barrier where it got to the public health system. And again, thanks to Gates Foundation, they funded us. We have done the effectiveness, all these clinical trials, every approval, every country approval, all less than 2 months. Less than 2 months. So when happening in other part of the world, they're happening in such a fast track on a clinical trial. In India, it's just impossible to get a clinical trial and touch upon something later. And we have done a lot of clinical trials in other part of the world. We have better experience knowing how much of the regulatory system happening in other parts, including US and UK and other countries. And we've done typhoid conjugate vaccine with an extremely drug-resistant strain. In Pakistan, I got in less than 10 days approval in Pakistan, clinical trial approval, which is impossible to get approval in India. If you want to do nothing less than 1.5 years in India, clinical trial approval. If we don't do clinical trial research, no innovations will happen. All innovation requires clinical research. That's the bottom line. And when Nature Medicine said this is one of the best products, not imported, Tabu MBK came, he said, we exported Gandhi to India, that's why we got a freedom. You should help Africa. The simple touch that our Indian pharma company exploits the African market, but they don't want to solve the African problem. You were very skeptical about Indian pharma company. Very, very skeptical. Particularly when HIV drugs, the supply to Africa, he was very skeptical. He was not very comfortable with Indian pharma companies. When he was talking to me. Everybody wanted to exploit African market. But he touched me that something to do for this thing. We made one typhoid conjugate vaccine first time in the world and partnered with the University of Maryland and Welcome Trust gave a grant. And we got 30 days IND approval, less than 30 days. 17 days precisely, I got US FDA approval, sitting in India, making the GLP material, and we have finished the toxicology in 30 days in US. And in 17 days, I got the IND approval, and I finished my 6 months in Baltimore clinical trial, in the newborn babies, in kids, I finished in less than 6 months, would take at least 4 years in India. Just see the contract between this thing. When I talk to regulatory people, oh, we're taking care of safety of the people. I don't want to talk about those jargon words, but if we copy US FDA regulation, we copy Chinese FDA regulation, we are through. Both regulatories takes care of safety and efficacy of it. But we copy a pharma drug, we don't copy the regulatory agencies. Is that sad part of it? And I think, this is the only country in the world, R&D is controlled by regulation, which I'm going to substantiate now. You look at, if I want to start R&D, my institutional biosafety committee should form, which is normally from the DBT, and I have to disclose all my R&D ideas. And all these R&D ideas, and even if I put a strain or plasmid from other country, I have to disclose, and all these document minutes of meeting gets into the web page of the DBT. And the Chinese are smart, they can monitor what my work is happening in this country. And they can copy it before I come out with anything. And that is what is happening, some of the Chinese companies, they even beating American science and technology. Even to animal ethics committee. US is very simple. You follow the US FDA regulation, every institute, every company has got a freedom to operate within the regulation. Simple already, but it's a self-disciplined regulation. Nothing outside control, not too much control by DBT or CDS or anything. It's a self-control within the law of that regulation. Simple things, nothing much complicated. And you look at again, sir, here I have handled institutional company for 7 years. GM, Biosafety Committee. Biosafety Committee become very complicated in the country right now. I will touch upon again on that. IND Committee, absolutely very painful process what we go through in the country. And my preamble is very simple, sir. And if something can be department is having a self-declaration for each company. If the company self-declaration, they don't even check anything what is coming from imported. If something can be self-declaration can be done for a few companies, your regulation can be removed. That can change a lot of games. Simple thing. And you look at it, sir. In India, the GMP product, in US, the GMP product is, I'm going to touch upon that. In India, we need a GMP product, 3 GMP laws, 99% pure. Again, I'm going to touch upon that. You look at here, the simple difference. US FDA want to be GMP material, an R&D material, can be taken toxicology and filed for IND and approved. They say even 90% pure protein is okay. So I asked the regulator, why 90% only? You are asking. Whereas my regulatory agency, DBT, asking 99% purity. They said, we have more contamination, more impurities in your toxicology. We want to pick up all the adverse reactions in the animal toxicology. So in manufacturing, you have some contamination that happens. That can be picked up the adverse reaction. So we want to have less purity in animal toxicology, but more purity in the phase 3 trial. Okay? So in India, it's just opposite. Even the GMP laws, how many life sciences company, startups, has got a GMP production facility in the country? None. No GMP facility for a small startups in India. They can't invest and wait for 10 years, product to come. Nobody can survive. Even preclinical trial in India is treated like a human clinical trial. So some of the companies have gone to Australia for toxicology and clinical trial. Very good example, Bharat from Institute of Science, a vaccine company. Bharat is a faculty. He went to, because he doesn't have GMP facility, he made a GMP material, took it to Australia, preclinical toxicology in 30 days, he finished a phase 1 trial in Australia, less than 6 months. Here's the Bharat is a good example. He said, I don't know GMP, I have to get out of the country. And that is what is happening seriously. We need all GMP product, and US FDA wants only for phase 3 material only GMP, not the phase 1 and 2, or preclinical toxicology, or not required. So I think this is a differential, sir. I can send you the slides. I don't want to complicate everybody there. WHO what recommends, and new clinical trials of our Gazette notification of 2019, what recommends. You look at it, sir, local toxicology, you look at simple things they recommend. Whereas India, everything acute studies, single dose study, I don't know why. You mean to say WHO is less regulatory and USFDA is less regulatory? I do not know, honestly. Why you want to put such a high regulation to stop the life startups to survive or to die in this country? This is a simple pick and this clearly indicates between WHO recommendation and USFDA also. USFDA is followed by WHO. And both you see the ticks, number of ticks, and I think it's right, we can send it to you also. And I think these committees, you see, I'm the only guy who knows this because when I was a starter, I was the one pushing the files in CSO, ABB, everything. So I know all the process. These are short.
We lost the voice.
You can understand this regulation is happening behind the gate. And look at very simple, sir. Thailand, India, and US, look at very simple difference between contrast. It takes, import of strain, it takes 2 months from IBSC or C-DEP to import a strain. Whereas the US doesn't need it. I can import from CDC or US anywhere without any problem. 1 to 7 days, anybody can get it US here. It's 2 months. And R&D, POC, 2 months. And GMP manufacturing, 3 to 4 months timeline. And there's no GMP batch required for the US product point of view. Animal Ethics Committee, just 1 day, 2 days within the internal committee. Everything is complicated. Look at 4 months is what is required US. And I think India is very complicated in that process. And again, import of strains, US none. But except biological warfare organism is required under US Homeland Security issues. Import of biological warfare. Remaining all not required any process, any academic institute, any industry can move forward. Whereas Europe is self-regulated. Whereas India, you see what are the complications, how many things, including direct gender foreign trade is required for me to import even small animal from US. Preclinical, I mentioned all this, it's complicated, but I want to make it the complication story, the simple language in tablet form. This tablet can be given to you also, sir, but it's a very complicated story, that's all I can say. And I think institutional biosafety company, containment is a national security issue, sir. The sad part is, they're asking now, even biosafety, facility, drawing and design to be given to DBT. And I think, the DBT has created more regulatory channels to create a more clear in people's mind. And in the process, even the drawing of biosafety, my BSL 4 containment, BSL 3 containment is highly intellectual properties of company. Even that they want a drawing and to put it in the internet. And that's dangerous for the country, for national security point of view. But nobody is there to understand this issue, unfortunately. And we have a BSL 3 production facility. They have appointed some private agency to audit our facility to give all the drawings and classifications and containment issues. And that is not good for the national security, but no biological containment facility will be shared with anybody except the US Homeland Security in US. Here in India, it's a public domain. Now, everything has to be shared. If you don't share, RCD doesn't approve anything. They stop everything. And ICMR, you want to strain from NIV Pune, first thing I say that right. Whereas I can import any strain from BAA from NIH. Or CDC Atlanta, I can import any strain as long as I register my company with the BAA webpage and I can import any strain. I'm actually, as we speak, I'm importing a new COVID strain of the JN1 variant. I'm importing from BAA without any problem. But if I ask ICMR, it's just impossible. And biodiversity below, no issue if you import a strain, you make a vaccine, no problem under biodiversity. But if you import a strain from ICMR, or I isolate a strain from India, then I'll come under biodiversity. And biodiversity is another complicated story, which I do not want. Even up to Jilla Panchayat level, they have gone to biodiversity committee. To that level, they have gone mine. Very, I don't know why it happened. So right now, what we're thinking, better to import a strain instead of even working with the academic institute with the country because of biodiversity. And the regulatory is simple, sir. I think the strength of CDS are making it very simple. We have brilliant medical doctors, subject expert committees. We have clinical expert committee. They are wonderful doctors, but they've never done clinical research in their life. They have treated a good patient, they've treated the patients. They are good medical doctors, but no expertise in product development, clinical research, no strategy, public health epidemiology, all that nothing. You ask for an efficacy trial, I want to do 10,000 people. They say, no, you do 25,000. What is the rationale? No rationale. Just do it. Just because I'm a subject expert committee. I think, they don't have, conduct of peer review of proposals, nothing to study the global landscape, what is happening in the other part of the world in clinical research, how that is compared with our trial. Because when we do a clinical trial, we want a global point of view because we publish all international journals. And whereas in US, these are solutions for this one, for CDSO. You like US FDA, their complete development plan, we discuss CDSO, my phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Once I give a given development plan, I finish phase 1, if anything adverse reaction, I stop the trial, inform the CDSO. If not, I continue my phase 2. After phase 2, I continue my phase 3. If any adverse reaction, any complication, I stop, inform the regulatory agencies. That's a process in US also. And we should follow them. And here, phase 1 is over, submit data. Review the data, again protocol submission for phase 2. Again review the protocol, again approval. It just lengthy process goes on, and I think, and finally manufacturer may prefer contract manufacturing or sourcing technology instead of innovating. That is what is happening right now in the country. And even we are feeling like that, honestly. And startups cannot survive, and no venture capital will fund. Everybody is asking, Jay can ask, why the venture capital is not coming in life sciences? Because our regulatory process is not transparent, not a single window. It is unpredictable regulatory. That is one of the reasons why venture capital doesn't want to get into life science companies in India. They are willing to put in pharma company where US and generic sales and all that, but not the life science startups. And you look at tuberculosis, we are one of the company next to GSK. Only 2 vaccine companies in the world, which is the phase 2, phase 3 trial in the tuberculosis vaccine. Our Honorable Prime Minister said, we want TB in India, but no strategy for us as a country. So we took up as a Prime Minister's vision, how to make this to happen for the country. Okay, some of the countries were laughing on our Prime Minister's statement, how you would solve it. How did your Prime Minister say that? I said, no, we'll solve it. Don't worry about it. We are scientists, our Prime Minister also visionary, we'll solve it. Okay, so I took it as a challenge. We worked with the Spain company, and that is now finished. We finished in phase 2 now in India, but phase 3 started in South Africa. But it took my oxygen DCG up to 18 months. 18 months. Just wasted 18 months of my time, which is already phase 2, phase 3 in South Africa. We will try after phase 3. Cholera vaccine, just simple. We finished phase 2 outside the country. When we want to do phase 3, again CDSO last year. Took 9 months for approval. And we lost the game, with Chinese, Korean. We lost the game at geopolitics. So Korean company, suddenly India is dealing the vaccine, cholera vaccine. Let's fund the Korean vaccine company, and they funded extra money to increase the capacity there in Korea. And we are the second company in the world, but we lagged behind because of this one. Malaria vaccine, the GSK is shutting down the manufacturing plant. They shifted to Bhubaneswar plant, now new plant. And we shifted. Again, there's so much of bureaucracy of NOC. I don't want this vaccine to be sold in India. I want only for export. Even export, there's so much of regulatory hurdles in the country if you want to manufacture in India. And I think, one window will happen in US FDA, what is happening here. R&D no approval, IND less than 30 days. It's a statutory requirement in US FDA. If you don't get approved in 30 days, deemed approved in that. India, IND, GLP required, chemistry required, manufacturing and control submitted. You are done in 30 days, you got approved. FDA allocates one project manager. In 30 days, that 30 days, project manager handles everything for you, phase 1, phase 2, phase 2 in a transition man. One man to handle in FDA. And he handles everything. He get all the approval process in place. And I think we need to have a similar strategy and very critical for us. And CDSO request again, we are hitting one filling line. They want us to make only one product. Whereas GSK, in Merck, in US, in one line, they manufacture 18 vaccines. But here, no, you can't manufacture, you can only manufacture one vaccine. We invest $200 million, one filling line. And the $2 million one product will not even give me $5 million in business. But then they want us to dedicate. I think we need to change their mindset also, that how the global changes. If they want, they can hire even a consultant from EMEA and USFDA, tell us what to be done. Okay? And I think China and South Korea regulatory registration, they can register the product in India, sir, Korean and Chinese. But they never allowed Indian companies to register in Korea and China. They were created a hidden barrier for us. No vaccine company, we are able to register in both the countries. Okay? And I think we have to, reciprocation should be implemented. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I'll take any questions are there, I'll take it. I made it short, but a lot of information there, but I'll send this circulation this week.
Anushka, can you unmute? Can you unmute? Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Ella. I think this has been extremely helpful and extremely insightful. So as per the plan, we'll go around the table and the secretary will then come back for his closing observations. So with that, shall we move to Mr. Bharat Shah, and again, very short interventions with the points.
What is it?
No, your points, your issues. The ones that you had flagged in advance. Yeah.
So colleagues, I am from IDMA. Out of 1,000 members, we have 900 members who are SMEs. And they really find it difficult on several counts in terms of device civilian, where risk assessment is possible, but to change the hardware in the whole plant is not possible. We made this application, but we are just waiting for the reply. The R&D or the innovation as such this year, innovation today or earlier tomorrow is our theme. So we are focusing on innovation. We know that as far as the formulations are concerned, there is a tremendous scope for domestic as well as for export. We had one meeting along with Minister and respected chairperson for NIPA, where we learned that there are 450 patents they have, but there are no buyers. I think we need to increase the academia industry collaboration. PPP model, public-private partnership, because there are several mid-sized companies cannot have that kind of funding. They may have ideas, they may have some technical people, but they are short of funds. So that is, some model should be worked out, and I absolutely agree with Sir that this is the commencement of strategy. We need to have strategy at least for 3 to 5 years as to how are we going to do, whereby self-reliance to a great extent we can achieve. Ease of doing business is what, even to my knowledge, to an extent, Dr. Ira also had mentioned about it. Ease of doing business, I think we are in that process, but I think we need to expedite that. I'm PLI scheme, which happened. It happened even 16, 17 years back, not PLI scheme, but Penji, some 3-4 manufacturers start making, and because of dumping or the price reduction by China, those plants who invested millions of dollars had to close. So here, anti-dumping duty, which is according to me a must in terms of process and self-life. We do not have enough infrastructure even for supply chain. It's a huge country, and when we talk about 2 to 8 degree formulation, even the vehicles which are required are not enough, but it has to have between 2 to 8, which remains mainly on paper. So we need to work on supply chain, consolidate our leadership in generics. We are master. Our 40% generics are sold in US. We need to see that how can we increase with this most favored nation policy. Rebuild our domestic capacities for API and KSM. Here the scale is a challenge. When we compare with China, I do not know 10 times, 20 times is the difference between what we make here and what they make there. So then again, to reach to a scale, again we would be looking for funds, and funds as a level playing field when we compare with other countries. Enable SMEs to scale up into complex generics and biologics, which as association we are trying to support SMEs. Thank you.
Just had a quick question on the funds part of it. What you're saying is obviously funds is an issue, and the solution being that they can access the market or they can access the banks.
Funding,
The funding.
funding, the cost of funding is very high.
Right.
That is what I am referring.
Sure. Thank you.
Even size, sir. Even size. In
Okay.
India, you get 1:2 ratio, 1:3 ratio in banking channels.
Right. Maybe you can amplify it once we come back. No, I think important point. We'll move to Mr. Sudarshan Jain, Secretary General of IPA.
So thank you very much. It is indeed a privilege to be part of this distinguished group, and thanks Secretary for setting the context of this meeting. I would like to focus on what Secretary was saying, and it is so relevant for all of us in the industry to move forward. And I can see for last 3 years the way the situation has changed. There is a definite linkage between business and geopolitical situation. We have to take cognizance of that fact, and strategy has to assume long-term dimension. Thank you, Secretary, very much for that. Second area which one realizes with your interaction is the role of evidence-based support for policy shaping. In that area, we are relatively weak at this moment. We are trying to build our capability because policy shaping cannot take place in vacuum and hunches and situations at the moment. We have to go a long way, and we are trying to build our way into it. And I will focus on some of these points going forward. As you rightly pointed out, like say 1 year back, we realized the weakness in our system. So first thing, even before the Trump administration, we asked IQVIA to do the study for us. What is the contribution of India to the US healthcare system, and what is the vulnerability of us as far as that is concerned? Because 3 years back, we had undertaken API study, PwC, and Praveen Mittal is part of it. He was in FICCI, KPMG, PwC did together. We provided the data to the government to form PLI policy. Because at the end of the day, last 3 to 4 years, that situation is moving in, and I remember many of the conversations which we had. So PLI scheme came into being, Bharat has been there, and the Bharat Inma team has been there. We came together, came with PLI scheme, then we came with IQVIA study, India-US partnership, because we said, yes, 50% of generic is supplied from India. But the question is, yes, generic is supplied, but we are dependent 75% on China. There is a question of shared priority for both nations that we have to deal with API security. That was the premise on which we were working. So as we have been highlighting, healthcare security is equivalent to national security, is equivalent to medical security. And we have been talking this for last 1.5 years, and this has assumed tremendous significance in the last 6 months. That there cannot be national security unless there is medical security. Point. COVID-19 brought this importance to us because during COVID-19, the price, all of us have been part of it, the prices of raw material was going up tremendously. Just to give the example, paracetamol 250 went up to 1,000, penicillin around 22, went up to 35. And on top of it, there was no visibility of when can we get the raw material. And we were facing that situation. And I would like to thank the government at that time. Government came out and we were first compared to any other nation in the world, because we used to sit in WHO meeting. They used to ask us, can you supply medicine to the world? And the government mandate was that we should say that we will supply. And we used to sit, all of us, OPPI is there, Atma is there, Dr. Hila is there, everyone is there, that we will supply the medicine. And we started building the inventory at that particular moment. Instead of 3 months inventory, most of the companies started getting 6 to 9 months of raw material. And also price volatility, yes, we did ask for the price increase at that time. We lived with that because that was the situation which demanded that kind of thing. And thanks to the government, we came out with the PLI scheme, 41 molecules. And it was announced very early in the game. 6,950 crores, also announced 3 Bharat. Very, very important step. And we used to talk about this in all WHO meetings, in all our discussions, Bharat is here, that we have been much more responsive than anyone else in other parts of the world. In fact, we presented in US that we have come out with this scheme. Now, if we look at what scheme has done, sir, and what has been learning so far, yes, Bharat took some time, a very, very important step, that unless you have got single point clearance in some of the areas Dr. Hila was talking about, and we, all of us who are involved in API manufacturing, environmental clearance, everything takes hell of a time. So Bharat at least facilitate the process to move forward. Secondly, some of the companies took some of the steps, disability allowance which was done. Arvindo and some of the companies took the step to get into fermentation. Penicillin is a very important point. And Chachi, you highlighted the importance of penicillin. It has taken time, but determination of Indian entrepreneurs to move it forward. So the PLI scheme has made progress, but it has taken 4 years time, 3 to 4 years time to move where we are. So anywhere when we talk to US and when we talk to other companies, other people around the world, if you start today, in pharma it is not that you start tomorrow. We have to think 3 to 4 years, and that's why the point which Secretary was talking about, strategy is important, visualizing the environment, 2 to 3 years time is more important. One step cannot decide your strategy, one step cannot decide your investment, because all the companies have gone through the process where they have burned the fingers as far as API is concerned. Many of our member companies, as was pointed out, lost a lot of money in 2003, 2004. Is API is a scale game? Yes, it is a scale game. It is not small because you are competing with the giant which has built capacity, and they are depreciated plants. So he can go down to the price anywhere he wants because depreciation is taking the area of the cost. So some of the areas which we are talking at this moment, and we are having discussion with DOP, and I will appreciate, sir, thank you very much, because it is end-to-end game. We reviewed the PLI scheme, again we have appointed PwC to look at the whole thing because outside objectivity is important. And one of the things which you are saying, end-to-end value management is important. Yes, we have got 41 molecules. Are they enough? We have to add certain molecules. Should we go at the back end? Because yes, you are making API, but if your KSM is not there, they will increase the price of KSM, impacting the price of API. So what are the KSMs? What are the API? We are trying to present to the DOP that can we think of some options of further increasing the API. Some schemes have been announced 15 days back, again, addition of molecules. So one area as far as API is concerned, securing pharmaceutical security is, can we look at end-to-end value chain? And can we look at some of the molecules, KSM, which have got bearing, and some of the things which we have been talking about, acetic acid, isopropyl alcohol, aminopenicillin acid, which are important for API. So is it worthwhile examining the KSMs, which are very important, point number one. Point number two is, again, I will thank the government for that. We have been talking about, we are observing that wherever the production has taken place, there is a predatory pricing. Classical example is penicillin, again, $35 1 year back, now it's $22, likely to come $18, right? So there is a constant reduction in price capacity is being built up, production will start, penicillin is fundamental, and there is a process which is being worked out by the government DOP. How do we decide MIP? Because it is very easy to say, I am involved in that from a manufacturing point, I should be given MIP, but there has to be a process where, because if we have MIP for API, it has got implications for formulation. In formulations, we are very strong globally. So where the advantage comes in? And should we really give MIP for all the products? If the competitive intensity is high, there are multiple manufacturers, should everyone be given? So what should be the criteria for MIP? It should not be, there should be, and the way the government works today, there are very clear criteria which are laid down. Predictive, we can only say at this particular moment, yes, predictive pricing increase. So two areas for self-sufficiency is, one is the predictive pricing, second end-to-end value chain. And the third one, which is very, very important, we being also the member of International Generic Biosimilar Association, we lead that association around the globe. We have been saying, why don't we pull the demand across the world and start looking at, the question is what we are talking from a business point of view, that there should not be only one single supplier for that API or KSM. There has to be a diversified supply chain, which is fundamental for any business. So if there are multiple manufacturers already available, India may be one of them, but if I can get from Europe or US, I may not get into that API. So there's a balance of protectionism, there's a balance of diversification. How do we balance it out? But in terms of prioritization, can we pool the demand across the world to fight that thing? So pooling the demand, using the technology, continuous manufacturing, and can we reduce the cost? So just to summarize and close it, end-to-end value chain is important. Second is the question of predictive pricing. Third is the pool demand. And fourth is looking at the technological options. How do we improve as far as manufacturing efficiency is concerned? Thank you once again, sir, to provide that opportunity. And these are our points. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jan. That's looking very, very helpful. With that, I move to Mr. Sagar Kaushik, representing UPL. Just pass the microphone.
Yes, thanks a lot for the opportunity. Sudarshan and myself, we come from the same school. So I don't know which new suggestion I will be able to add, but nevertheless I will try on my thoughts. So I think, sir, the strategization process in the way you started, I just want to add one thing to that. The time has come that farmers should also look at the adjacent sectors from where something could be gained, and also the adjacent sectors could gain from farming. Example, sir, we are from the agrochemicals side. You are aware, sir. Agrochemicals in the world are the diversification from pharmaceutical. Last 50, 60 years, all the pharmaceutical companies, most of the pharmaceutical companies, they created a new division for agrochemicals, whether it was Hertz or Roncola or Japanese company, or they all started from that point. Now, today if you take the situation of agrochemicals in India, diversification from pharma, I am very proud to mention that agrochemical, India is the fourth largest in the world. We are the second largest exporters in the world ahead of the pharmaceutical, ahead of the US. So I think how we have reached to that particular situation, and we continue to grow. Our total world market of agrochemicals are about $80 billion. And if you add our exports and the domestic, we are close to $9 to $10 billion. You can imagine that our Indian market share is almost close to 11 or 12%. We will have at least 10 molecules where in those agrochemicals we dominate in the world. Our market share for some of the molecules could be of the order of 75 to 80%. And the products will still continue. I need to say they are the post-patent, no doubt about it, but still there is much more life still left there. And the value of those products will not be less than, I would say, $700 to $800 million individually. Some of them are smaller also. So I'm just trying to delineate a picture that the possibilities exist. Now, how it has happened? some of the things which Sudarshan is asking for it, I think in the agrochemical sector, many of the companies have already done it. So you take, for example, my own company, UPL. So leadership, when we say, for us the leadership means that have we identified the select chemistries, and each of the chemistry we have done the detailed script of which are the reactions and which reactions at the highest value. Do we have that under control? So the comparison with China is to control that particular sector and work on that. Now, China on the other hand have the art of managing the generics dominance, and they have this special art to manage Indians. This I can tell you from my experience. They know how to crush the upcoming company. They know how to crush a product or the molecule. And we have seen that they give options. They will give you multiple options that you can still come to us, we can reduce the price, we can do this and that. So it's a very different game which they play, and it's high time that we could do that. And we have faced the problem. Today, as UPL, we can compete on any product, those products which we manufacture. But still with China, our competition is not with the Chinese company, it is the government of China. And that we cannot do. So therefore, we need to really build a leadership where we are talking about the selected value chain of the chemistries, where we have the dominance, and the value chain need to be minimum 70 to 80% localized. Otherwise, it is no value chain. We have to extend the value chain to the globe, not we have to bring the global value chain to India. We should do where there is a need. I think that's one area I wanted to mention, and we should not be, Secretary Sir, happy that just UPL is successful. Leadership is that when you have at least 20 companies aspiring to come to that particular level in a country, then we call that we have the leadership. Leadership with the players, leadership with the molecules. So that's one part that I wanted to mention. And namely, some of you know chemistry a lot. The cyanation chemistry, phosphorus chemistry, H2S chemistry, phosgene, acrolein. These are the chemistries very difficult to handle, and we have the dominance in India. And we can start. Now there are two things appear, and partly I have borrowed for the suggestion once respected secretary has given, that how do we find the solution? Because with China, we need to have, so we identify that which reaction, which KSM, where we need to really make sure that it is under control. But at the same time, the products are coming from the petroleum, from the refinery. From petroleum, the next step is that what is the first level derivative or the second level derivative. So, and then we have to see that as UPL, I cannot invest into the refinery. So therefore, how do I move forward? Because I need step 1 and step 2 derivatives for my downstream chemistry. So therefore, we actually really thought about it. And sir, I came to one suggestion is that if we go for the side of the refineries and all, you need also much more capital, etc. Right? It is well understood. But what we could do, sir, as a suggestion, that could we create the alliances or JVs with the public sectors to gain access to level 1, level 2 derivatives. And now this will actually help the refineries because they get also some downstream and they do refinery anyhow. For them the cost is not much and we are able to at least capture the essence of the starting point of the value chain. And most important, sir, in the end, if you come out with a thought that look, there is still some viability gap in the process, and as government we will like to support the value chain, you have the instrument to do it because it's PSU. To support directly a private sector, it may have lot of loop to process, etc. But here, I think you have the instrument by which the strategy execution is also possible. So this is a sort of a comprehensive suggestion which I wanted to make. And Sudarshan also mentioned about the other challenges we face with regard to major risk which comes from China. And because immediately the reaction from China is very strong, and they make sure that the production is stopped and or the damage already happened. So I think it has been mentioned that some of the remedies are available, but these remedies need to be looked into, that the remedial process should be linked to the project approval, assuming it will happen. The chances are very high that it will happen. Now, I have seen very often that at the level of the secretary, they say, hey, Sagar, go ahead, we are there to support. But sir, you know, those words are essential. But by the time you reach that goal post, you know, the transfers happen and a lot of other things happen. So therefore, you are in a high and dry situation. So if you could really take that, could there be a provisional, the remedies awarded, and the analysis should still happen, and outcome-oriented things could be changed. And this is really essential. Without this, it's very difficult to really move for our investment, etc. So the R&D process that I think was touched from the beginning itself, Krishna, Dr. Ila. But I think the focus has been more on the regulatory side. He made a very strong and provocative statement that we can copy the product, but we don't copy the regulation. I think we can copy the regulation, but still it is difficult for US and several countries. The same thing if we do in India, they still have some doubts. So I think those areas we have to still plug when we are talking about the FDA and a few other the platforms which have been created. We need to make sure that the mutual recognition of the regulatory processes, they need to be adopted. You cannot say that my process and this process is 100% different. You can say that I like your process 80%, but 20% you have to repeat. Understand it. You can't say that the 100%, you're not even encouraging, you're not even giving a space to improve. So I think there are these areas to be included in the next processes. I don't want to repeat more. I think Sudarshan, you have touched a lot of other things which are also part of my research. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kaushik. And I think it was wonderful to hear the additional points, and you avoided the repetition. That's much appreciated. Moving to Mr. Pawan Chaudhary, who is the Chairman and Director General of MTEI. And also, sir, if you could just keep it to the new points in the interest of time. Could somebody pass the mic?
The first point which I would like to address as per the agenda given is encouraging the shift of medical device manufacturing to India. So the Indian market is 1.5% or 1.6% of the total global market. So expanding insurance coverage, which is already happening, is really making a significant difference to the size of this market. The 70 years plus population which has come under insurance recently has activated PE funds. We had an event recently, MedTechCon, where we found those PE funds which had invested in senior care were languishing, were thinking that their funds are languishing, have suddenly become active and are seeing an upswing in their investments. So this insurance piece is very important. There are several family offices in
It's
India.
just not clear. They are interested in investing in what? In insurance or in medtech?
In insurance, because of the coverage of this 70 plus population by insurance, their investments in senior care facilities, instruments, etc. Have become buoyant. Similarly, adjacencies also, sir, are becoming more active. For example, I'm sure companies sitting here or Zydus or Alchem, etc. have already invested from pharmaceuticals into medical technology. Paras, a defense firm, has already invested. We had alerted the government and Niti Aayog 3 years back that defense will become interested in medical technology because it's both high precision engineering, which is what is making this market and this manufacturing ecosystem more solid. The second point, sir, I'd like to speak about is policy predictability. Whether it is on pricing policy or other policies, we request consistency. And the regulatory framework still remains complex and not fully aligned to global standards. We will need to harness both the domestic and the international currents, at least in regulatory, sir, because much of the work has been done and much of our export markets will depend on whether we are complying with the global standards or not. The next point, sir, about public procurement. This space also should give greater width of incentives, or should take into account greater number of factors to qualify for public procurement. R&D should be one of these, sir. Why? Because though we have only 1.5% of the global medtech market, we have 6% of the global R&D investment in India, which is nearly equivalent to China and Germany, which are number 2 and number 3. That means if we were to also incentivize those companies which have participated in R&D in a big way here to participate in public procurement, it will be a great move, sir. Last point on this part is the skill training. We need to focus on targeted skill programs for manufacturing, focusing on precision manufacturing, quality control and compliance. Now I come to the second part of the agenda, boosting medical device exports from India. In this, the first point, sir, we need to understand what will the target markets be, and also look at these target markets through a geopolitical filter which you can provide us. If we look at the growing demand and fewer entry levels, we see Africa, Asia, Latin America, etc. But the geopolitical filter we need from you. The second point on exports is the product segments and strengths. These we need to identify, sir. Where will we focus our R&D and exports? In consumables, where we already have our strengths, or will we focus at the intersection where the our strengths and market opportunities intersect? So then it could be devices for aging population, chronic disease management technology, etc. The third point after identifying product segments and markets is target audience. We need to understand what is the target audience we need our advocacy and marketing efforts to reach. Healthcare providers, regulators, investors and distributors. Fourth point, sir, is regulatory harmonization, which I have already spoken of, so let me not repeat it. Fifth point, export market entry assistance through documentation, compliance and market entry support. And the last point is branding and global positioning. There is low international awareness of Indian medtech capabilities, though there are some very fine domestic multinationals which are emerging from India whose product is being applauded in the countries where it is going. So we need to have a brand India medtech through digital campaigns, expos, embassies, etc., which is very strategic and let me say productive. That's what I like to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary. I think again very, very helpful. We'll now go around the table, starting with Mr. Ashok Madan. If you can just give a one-line introduction and then cover your points in 2 to 3 minutes, I'll be happy.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for this kind opportunity. I'm Ashok Madan from Indian Drug Manufacturers Association, and I just add on to certain points what our national president Mr. Bharat mentioned. 90% of our membership comprises of medium enterprises. When we look at certain canvas of schemes, we find there is a scope for enlarging those coverage to more of the medium enterprises. If we look at the PLI 2, we find 1,750 crores has gone to 35 companies which are in the medium sector or the startups, whereas the rest of the amount has gone to the other sector. Similarly, we look at the PRIP, which is proposed to be there. We find 125 crores will be going from the KT to the medium and the startups, which again comprises only about 2.5%. So we are talking more on the side of the medium enterprises, which can really, as has already been mentioned, the source of innovation for the pharma firms. When we look at the implementation levels, especially Schedule M, we have a very good scheme from our DOT, the RPGS, which has already been revised to benefit the medium enterprises. But again, in this, we have certain issues of compliance. When you look at the Schedule M, the margin money required is around 2 crores if you invest around 10 crores to upgrade your facility. That amount for the medium enterprises is again a challenge. When we come to the working, it is around 3 to 4 months time that will be required at least to upgrade. During that time, the unit will has to halt the production. Overhead expenses will remain. So it's a virtual double whammy for the organization to go for upgradation, as well as the medium and the small enterprises are concerned. And similarly, when they are going for upgradation, compliance to the Schedule M, we find certain stipulations of Schedule M, they require separate spacing for each activity. Now there is a constraint of space within the unit. They cannot expand the plot area. You cannot buy that adjacent plot because that is already occupied. Or even if it is not occupied, the moment that anybody comes to know that the price is available or somebody is looking for it, the price will shoot up. So we had requested through our representations also that Schedule M may be kindly kept as guidance one, but not as the mandatory one. Whereas it is at the moment mandatory and any violation would mean it's a violation. In case of guidelines, it could have been a comma. So that is our submission. And thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your points. I don't think Prabhakar will have some points on the industry side, so we'll move forward with your permission. Mr. Mathai.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman sir, for inviting us. So I represent OPPI, which is the 26 global research-based pharma companies present in India. Now for these 26 research-based pharma companies which are in India, though as India we are about 20%, 18-20% of the global population, but in terms of revenue coming from India, it's a very low less than 0.75%, which signifies the humongous potential which our country offers in terms of increasing the reach which is there and the potential which is there within the country. Now if we look at, I won't touch upon subjects which have already been touched upon by all my industry colleagues, so most of it has been covered, so I'll only touch upon a few things which have not been covered. If we look at our much talked about vision of Amrit, and if India has to really become a Vishwa Guru, then we need disproportionate focus on research and innovation, and especially in our kind of a field. Where we are today is because of innovation that was done 20, 30 years back. Forever, India cannot be a generics player. We have, I mean, at least for the last 20 years, I've been hearing that we are third largest by volume and 14th largest by value. And we are there for 20 years. We need to move up the value chain. So generics comes only when there is innovation. So I think we need something which is more focused to incentivize research and innovation. And that is what will drive the global pharma companies into India. Because they have gradually reduced their presence or maybe reshaped their presence in India by shifting focus to GCCs and now there are several other activities which we are doing which are still happening in the country now, even through clinical trials. So one is clearly increased focus on research and innovation so that there is more innovation happening in India and there is more which we can do as far as the mission of discover in India and innovate in India is concerned. I mean 90% of the drugs which are still sold in India, more than 90%, the basis of that is innovation. So that this innovation came in 20, 30 years back. So that is point number one. Point number two, for more and more global clinical trials to happen in India, I think we necessarily need to address the regulatory challenges which lie seriously. I think Dr. Krishna Ella gave examples, hundreds of examples, where we as a country, I mean, we are not attractive enough. And the global management see that this is more of a management lane when things will not really happen the way they are happening in other parts of the country. And I'm sorry, but if you see in the field of biologics, I think China, we'll never be able to catch up with China and Korea because of the regulatory acceleration which they did. So second clear area is on regulatory challenges and how do we really overcome them. And the third one which relates to our now and here business is on if we can have a more certainty and less ambiguity in our pricing. So that will ensure that there are longer term investments which happen and we invest more into the country to build big brands. Even after several years, I mean, we don't have a single pharma brand which is more than 1,000 crores. Not a single pharma brand. 1,000 crores, I'm not talking 10,000 crores. So the potential is humongous. I mean, for me, the numbers, whatever you may say, are very easy to achieve. And if we can address these three challenges around regulatory, around pricing, and around intellectual property, I think whatever number you tell me, I'll be much more optimistic than anyone sitting in this room. And I'm telling you based on my Sudarshan and I, between the two of us, we have spent maybe 70, 80, 90 years in this industry. So that goes to show the age of both of us. So, okay, thank you very much. I won't repeat the other things which have been said.
So great inputs from a very young person. And we'll also look forward to more specifics subsequently after this discussion is over.
I've got points here, but
sure. I think subsequently we'll capture that.
I'll share everything with you. I won't read it.
If you can move the microphone to the next gentleman, sir.
Good evening, everybody. I would be speaking on behalf of medical equipments. Like there is an agenda, we have mentioned that we want to create India a major hub for manufacturing of medical devices. So the government of India has taken a very good initiative by differentiating the Make in India list and global tender inquiry list. But unfortunately, recently we received a notification from the Ministry of Expenditure in which 354 items were excluded from Make in India list and added to the global tender inquiry list. That means the Indian manufacturers who have been manufacturing those equipment were discouraged. I am not very clear about the total amount of equipment, 354 equipment, but yes, 9 equipments from that list were being manufactured by my company, and we have been manufacturing those products for the last 2 decades and exporting to more than 100 countries. And it's not only our company who's manufacturing, there are many Indian companies who are manufacturing those products. but those products have been excluded from the Make in India list and have been added to global tender list. So I would request that before taking this, if the industry is taken into consideration and their capability and what exactly they are, because the products which we are manufacturing, which have been excluded from Make in India, are being used by AIIMS, Safdarjung, you talk about SCPGI, Fortis, Max, these big hospitals, and many big hospitals all across the globe are using our products. And secondly, regarding the exports, what we talk about the exports, the main thing is that because since we are exporting to more than 100 countries, we have tried a lot to export our products to China. But getting the certification from China to make our products sellable in China is not that easy. But if a Chinese company wants to sell their product in India, it is very easy for them. They very easily get the certifications, they get all the clearances, and the product is available in the Indian market. They have a very economical rate, which is a big dent to the Indian manufacturers. And rather, I would say that there are certain products which are not being made in India. Government should take an initiative that while publishing the tenders for the public procurement, they should mention that preference will be given to Make in India. The companies who can invest in R&D, who have the capability or can take on help from any other agency, will try to build those products in India, which will make India self-sustainable and competitive in India as a global market. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very, very helpful team. Can you move to the next one, please? If you could also introduce yourself and the organization.
I am Praveen Mittal and I look after the Export Promotion Council for Medical Devices, which has been set up by Department of Pharma Government of India. I think the majority of the points have been already submitted here. Only 2 points knows about it is the LTVs that we face more than the price challenge for the medical device companies. It's the LTVs, which is higher costs and delay approvals for Indian company products, specifically to US and to Europe. Sir had asked me that, about the ESCA lab. Sir, I just want to brief you that we did a bit of a research. 116 ESCA labs exist globally. And you'll be surprised, 17 in China, 66 in US, 7 in Japan, about 4 in Italy, 1 in Sweden, 1 in Germany, and a couple of other geographies. So we're very keen that we would like to work under your guidance to get an ESCA lab established in our country that helps in export of products to the US. So NTT was one part of it. Another part which we wanted to basically touch upon is under the guidance of the medical devices industry. So pharma didn't become pharma in a single day. So today at the fingertips you have those 10 or 12 champions of our Indian industry which are recognized globally, Sun, Cipla, Gumpel, Lockhart, Zydus, Canada and many more. So we must look at medical devices as well, and if we can create those champions in our medical device industry, the Indian companies like Polymed or the Arrangers, HMD, Scanray, SMD. So what happens is if those products start moving globally, then there is an entire value chain, and of course the MSME companies which exist, you will also get business from them. They also start moving in globally. So I think that would, as an export promotion council, we also like to work very closely on that, on creating domestic champions so that they're able to make market. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. Very excellent points. Mr. Mittal, moving to you.
Sir,
I already had some observations. So
sure. I'm Rajiv Nath. I'm the forum coordinator for IMEC, Association of the Indian Medical Device Industry, which has got more than 400 manufacturers in 7 verticals: disposables, consumables, electronics equipments, instruments and implants, and IVD reagents. I'm also the MD of Hindustan Citizen Medical Devices, which incidentally, again during COVID times, we did not allow the country to be held at ransom. We were the largest manufacturer globally for auto-disable syringes. 1 of every 7 syringes given globally came from our company. More than 2 billion syringes were supplied by us. Coming to the strategy part, to bring manufacturing into India. Investments in manufacturing in India will only take place if business is going to be viable. Simple. It's not by subsidies. Manufacturing will not be impacted by subsidies. It can only take place if manufacturers, business people find it viable. During COVID times, between March and June, manufacturing became viable. Manufacturing was fully supported 24/7 by every government officer, every government department, and by the public themselves. What we achieved between those 4 months' time, I would like to see replicated on a daily basis right now. If you want to not have any lockdowns, we had lockdowns because we were handed ransoms, we were not even making simple thermometers. A simple thing like that. Whatever we had, we were re-exporting back to China. But on the alarm bells and network secretary duty that time, please stop the exports. थोड़ी बहुत inventory है वो भी वापस जा रही है. And similar for masks and other things. So if we could have automobile giants coming in to make ventilators in 3 months, 4 months time, we have the engineering capacity and capabilities. Having said that, why have they gone back and why are they not continuing to manufacture? Why that euphoria which was there is now lost. All those PP kit manufacturers which were there, the Prime Minister was boasting. 250 manufacturers were there. 30 manufacturers came for making thermometers. You make a list now, you will not be able to count 3 or 5 of them. All the government exporters, they don't find it worthwhile to continue to manufacture medical devices. Why? Because, again, starting point is regulations. If pharma and vaccine, which has got regulations for more than 50 years, since before independence and a law before independence, with that kind of maturity and experience, if they are struggling, can you imagine we have been thrust into that cesspool? Medical devices now being regulated as drugs, which we didn't want. We were the only industry in the country who asked for regulations, but not as drugs. But finally, when it came to us, we were treated like drugs. So the first, we were just asking, the National Medical Device Policy has already been announced 2023. It's a wonderful policy. We want to see that vision to make India number 1 in the world to be implemented. No deviation from the policy, please. It has got 6 strategy points. We are not asking for any deviation of any of the 6 strategy points. We want to see that strategy being implemented. The only difference is many strategic points have been put in a very vague, obtuse manner. We will give you our perception what we feel the strategy should be. Strategy number 1 says streamlined regulations. Very vague word. How do you streamline regulations? Can you see for pharma what should be done? Is it by single window? Is it only for CDSU or for all regulations? If I have to put a factory, I have to take 33 regulatory approvals before I come into manufacturing, between state and central. A simple thing, I start digging my factory, I need a mining certificate. For having a mining certificate, I need to have a building plan approval. When I put my factory up, I can't get a commercial license until I get an NOC from a fire department. Then the factories, then the CDSU. So a factory which is now commissioned, implemented, installed, it also has a C certificate. Very interesting. ISO 1345 C certificate है, लेकिन CDSO का license नहीं. Reality. 6 months later, I got my CDSO license from getting my CE marking certificate. I was good enough for foreign regulatory auditors, but not for my own auditors coming from the country. That's the reality of India. So when we talk about streamlining regulations, what we're seeking, we want a separate law for medical devices like it is there internationally. We made a separate regulatory rule book. We were assured we'll get a law later on. We were told we'll have a separate regulatory framework. The DEO, everybody had consulted us. That is being held back. Now that the regulators have tasted blood, they want to retain it. If food can have separate FFSI, why not devices? These people had sought from the pharma industry an amendment of the Drugs Act, modernize, reforms. Poor fellows, they are being held up because of us. They are happy with the changes which they wanted. But we don't want to be regulated like pharma. Because we created a dissent, that amendment was also held up. So now they've created a rift between 2 industry segments. And I have to hear from my elder brothers in pharma that आपके चक्कर में हमारा लॉ हो गया. तो इनकी भी प्रोग्रेस हो रही है. इनका रास्ता अलग है, हमारा रास्ता अलग है. We are not pharmaceuticals, we are not medicine, we are engineering companies. The second point is, you cannot really be succeeding in the country in India or exporting unless you have a strong domestic market. You need to have economies of scale in India before you can offer exports. We do have some companies in India who have completely, I would say, ignored domestic market and focused on exports because you get more value addition, like you also have in pharma. But in most cases, 90% cases, you really cannot succeed unless you will have credibility and the learning curve and the testimonials from Indian market industry. Now to achieve success over here, you have to select the public healthcare, you have to select the private healthcare. In both we face two challenges. In public healthcare you are challenged either because of element low priced competition coming from China at the low end of the market, or we are thwarted in the middle or the high quality segment because tenders will be seeking CE marking and US FDA as regulatory compliance requirements. Now, central government understood this, the PMO kindly took out a letter, Mr. Nibendra Mishra, to support us on that no such exclusionary terms we put into tenders. But this is only for central government. Most business in India is also in the state because health is a state subject. So advisory needs to go and follow-up needs to be done. Many of these state health schemes are through Ministry of Health, through NHM. If they are through NHM, then let us use NHM to wield that they should not use such exclusionary terms in their tenders where Indian manufacturers cannot access our own Indian market. I don't need a US driving license to drive in India. If I have a CDSO license, it should be enough. If you want to buy quality, okay, higher than CDSO, wonderful. Give me a value-added price higher than the CDSO based on objectivity. If somebody has got an ICMET certification, ISO 13485, you mentioned MDSAP, you got these international certifications. Give them a price benefit, 2%, 3%, no concern that you recognize higher quality. Strategy number 2 says attract investments in medical devices. So this cannot happen unless you've got 10 to 15% custom duty. Mobile phones and televisions were not being made when there was 0% custom duty. If you will have 0%, 5%, 7.5%, even Indian manufacturers have become just brand holders. वो खुद चाइना से, ताइवान से, मलेशिया से चीजें बनाते हैं, अपने ब्रांड में माल बेचते हैं. Very quickly, sir, this was a strategic point, but along with this also there is, Secretary of your permission, 3 operational points which are linked to this. Number 1 is, for example, very recently we gave data to DOC and to DOP that there's been a surge of imports taking place in 11 medical devices with more than $10 million of imports, which goes as minimum as 15% increase to as high as 85% increase in the last 6-9 months. Same by duty can be applied. The biggest challenge we face is operational. We can give Excel data, we don't have access to production data. We are told as mission, आप ही लेकर आइए. If production data can be made available from DGCIS in objective manner through the GST data system now, that will be very helpful for our cases. Number 2, most of the important exports take place of others. Very difficult to quantify that. We have been seeking that the 8-digit HS code may be either to be expanded to 10-digit or maybe new 8-digit HS codes may be currently provided for at least the main items of the others. The next is the again issue. When we talk about, for example, pandemic products, post-COVID critical products, which were the COVID critical products? Masks, PPE kits. You know where the bullet machinery came from, where every component came from. For thermometers, when manufacturing didn't start happening from China. We were air-freighting machines to make these welding lines for the PPE kits and everything. Now, on one side, we want to back off from China, but we have to do it strategically. So, if we have to
start, I think very important points. You just go a little faster because some people have to leave.
Yes, sir. Just let me close this point over here. It's regarding visas. If I have to ship manufacturing from China to India, I need the technicians to be available here to put my installation and commissioning of my machines. I've not been able to get my engineers to come in from China because visas are not available to them. We give visas to the salesmen and to the sales directors, but not to the engineers and technicians. Under the GAP की वो $3,000 से कम सैलरी कमा रहा है, उसको नहीं दे सकते. I am told कि आप क्वालिटी अचीव नहीं करते हो, क्वालिटी को क्रिएट नहीं कर पाते हो. वो मशीनें हमने खुद इंस्टॉल करके हमने खुद कमीशन करी हैं, तो क्वालिटी परफेक्ट आएगी नहीं. Quality perfect आने के लिए we need that assistance, which is not being given to us. These are the most 2 important points. Of course, I've got more. There are slides which are given across to you earlier and I'll share whenever you want. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I hated to interrupt you again, but unfortunately, I got some of the delegates. Mr. Aditya, I think you need to leave. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Now, why don't you pass this?
Sorry.
Thank you so much, respected sir. Thanks for inviting us. Samrat and I, we are from Merck KGA from Germany. We are the one. We are working very closely with Indian pharmaceutical industry. We supply a lot of raw material, consumables for the production, drug discovery, and R&D. API and KSMs, of course, is a big concern which we heard from the respected delegates. The other area which we are working very closely is on the excipients. Right now, most of it is imported. What at Merck we are trying to do is looking at options as to how do we expand our footprint here in terms of manufacturing in India. The other thing is there are a lot of components, there are a lot of products which are used as consumables, a lot of filters which are used in the pharmaceutical industry. We have expanded our manufacturing and footprint in India, in Bangalore, and we have started making some of those products already here in Bangalore. The third major aspect which we talked about was around skill building. At Merck in Bangalore, we are running a lot of schools for the Indian pharmaceutical professionals, technicians. We bring them there, we conduct a lot of trainings, sessions for them. So upskilling is one major area which we have been working very closely with the Indian pharmaceutical industry, and that's where we are contributing from Merck. Samrat, would you like?
Thank you, sir. I think he has actually mentioned, Aditya mentioned the top 5 points, but going by your thought process with which you started meeting in terms of creating holistic thing, I think 2-3 points if I can put out here is the first thing is probably creating a supply chain and to understand that how we can actually probably, I should not use the word reasonable, but how we can actually create an ecosystem where we can talk with our friendly, favorable global partners. One part can be the executive part, what are we doing? There are many things what we know that we don't have, but do we know that there are many things what we have which can actually go back to those supply chain ecosystems? And I'm giving examples. Department of Heavy Water, Department of Atomic Energy and India, they give heavy water, and that has applications in pharmaceutical research and moonshot R&D projects. This is something which is being used in many progressive advanced big farmers for next generation R&D projects happening outside. But unfortunately, the Indian pharmaceutical industry is still to adapt to that particular system. So it opens up 2-pronged approach. Number one, how this kind of raw materials can be used in the Indian farm. And number two, how we can actually use our areas of strength when we are discussing critical bilateral solutions with the countries. The second part is, I want to slowly touch upon trust-based approach with big pharmaceuticals and the startups. We are actually probably not there as a kind of competition layer, but how we can actually, under your leadership in the pharmaceuticals coordination, make it a kind of a companion-based relationship where the big pharma can work on advanced manufacturing, high-skill manufacturing, scale-up manufacturing, but the startups can actually complement that with very high-level R&D and research, which can actually build it into that system, because that would be a kind of a happy to have a comparison to scale up our innovations. So these are the 2 points.
Thank you so much, Samrat, and please convey my thanks to Aditya also. We'll move down the table to you, sir. Yeah, no, you can pass that. You've got another one. You got supply chain resilience of minds. Please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair and co-chairs. My name is Atmanirbhar. I represent ADMI, which is Association of Diagnostic Manufacturers of India. We are members, having around 100 plus members, and around 85% is in the category of MSME. And I'd like to pick up some points. Different points, same topics but different perspectives. One point is regarding regulations. Like when I have to enter a country like US and Europe, I'm subjected to a kind of clinical trials, validations, and so on and so forth. But in India, we should strengthen the regulations in this way. It's there, the provisions are there, but then we give them easy access just because a company, the product is having a CE or an FDA, they get access to the Indian markets. But they are not clinically evaluated whether the product will actually be effective in terms of accuracy or in terms of sensitivity. So that is one thing that we need to focus on. That so because diagnostics is the first step which comes before the treatment side. So it's a little different from medical devices. It is different from treatment. So diagnostics is also the human body, and it is a very crucial. 70% of the clinician decisions are based on these diagnostic tests. So any product which is coming into India needs to be clinically evaluated also, like we are also doing. So like for example, if we have to file a product with Celesco, and we have to, so the test license, after the test license, we have to evaluate the product at different sites. That is not the case in case of the imported product. So that is something that I like to bring it to your notice if something can be done out there. Second thing is that if we have to have a new innovation and there is no predicate device, then the innovation is not going to be appreciated by anyone. It is going to be there only in papers. So there has to be a mechanism where any new innovation needs to be, covered with the regulation. I'll give an example. In South Korea, China, these countries, if there's a new innovation product, the regulator sits, across the table. They do a lot of consultations and discussions in terms of the innovation that it brings or the value brings onto the table, and they co-create the product, and the product is launched within 9 to 12 months. And what Dr. Eva has said, I also agree that here that mechanism needs to be introduced. Then we also need infrastructure in diagnostics. As what we see in COVID also, one of the key strengths, if you look at quality, is the availability of clinical samples, which is unfortunately not the case. We had a share of challenges the industry had, but then I think the government in its bid also supported us, but then that is a one-time intervention. It has to be done on a concurrent basis. So there has to be a biobank which is available in all parts of the country, which is a repository of bioequivalent samples. So whether it's any kind of tissue, cell, or sample of any disease, whether it's an infectious HIV, hepatitis B, C, dengue, malaria, if there's any outbreak like Leishmania, chikungunya, all those samples, clinical samples are available to the industry, so that if in any case, if something is required, the industry can procure and immediately launch the product. I'll give you an example, live example. In Korea, they make there are a lot of companies which make dengue. Dengue is and in Korea is not in that tropical zone. So it's because of the industry, academia, and the availability of the ecosystem, which is actually enabling the companies to launch products, innovative products in a much shorter period of time. Another thing that we need to do is alignment of the regulations with international standards, because that will help launch. So that since there are many departments, if we are able to harmonize, our go-to-market strategy will be much shorter. because we will align to what the international requirements are, whether we take any country, whether it's US or Europe or Brazil, if you have to apply for a visa or a TGA in Australia. So those harmonizations need to be there. In countries like, I'll give you an example, in countries like China, South Korea, Germany, they support local manufacturing and they have a single window regulatory system. They go on to the extent that, what is required. One of the reasons that is seen is the supply chain, which is not available during the COVID times. Here also in IBD, the supply chain is not available. So we need to have that ecosystem in place, whether we look at medical device or a cluster that is already announced in the policy. That
sorry, I hate to interrupt because these are very important points. Maybe a minute more and you can wrap up. Because the secretary has got another commitment and you need to go. I will probably take a minute more to wrap up on our side. But I think very, very important point, same as earlier. But if you just speak. Of course it is. Of course, absolutely. So if we can just wrap it up a little faster. If you could wrap it up.
Scheduled time was till 4 p.m. We've already exceeded the time and there are more remaining.
So, to strengthen the domestic industry, if we have to, we need to have good, strong procurement policies. Like we have the QCBS, which is quality cost based selection, which is there in WHO and GAVI. So they follow this instead of just going by L1, because L1 doesn't assure high quality products. It can also mean a low quality product. So we should have, instead of L1, we should have QCBS, which is cost quality based system in terms of procurement, which is strengthen the local industry, and a preference has to be there. In spite of the order being there, we are not supported.
Absolutely, I think that's a point that came up earlier also.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Are there any new points or should we wrap it up? So would you have anything else to say?
You can repeat it. Keeping focus of the time.
Thank you so much. I'll just take 15 seconds to kind of go through things that are being said, regulatory challenges and harmonization. That's something common across pharmaceuticals, vaccines, devices and diagnostics. Certainty of the regulations, cost of funds that came up, the need to support innovation, and there were multiple suggestions that came in, a lot of suggestions from Dr. Ella. MII preference, again what you were talking about, the Make in India preference, common across all the various sub-industries. Institutional support by government, such as the ESCA lab, and the kind of support that was given during COVID. Skill programs, focus on adjacencies such as the chemicals, defense, agrochemicals and so on. Need for economies of scale, protection for medical devices, including using BCP, increasing the BCP, just have the tariffs, follow President Trump. Chinese visas for manufacturing, it seems to be an important issue because they can set up the manufacturing, mapping supply chains and ensuring resilience, and the biobank that you were talking about, again something that Dr. Ella was also talking about. These were largely what came out of all the industries we were talking about. We'll look forward to the details. Please ensure that your emails and mobile numbers are registered. If you can give it to the lady who's sitting outside, so that we can then reach out to you, get back the inputs. You have something more to say in 30 seconds?
Yeah. 20 seconds. So in countries like, small companies, MSME companies, when they have to go abroad like US and CE, they need to pay a lot of money per product. So it is in the range of 20 lakhs plus and even.
Yes, we are aware.
So if there can be reimbursement policies which can support, like in Export Promotion Council, so like countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, they can 50 to 100% reimbursement.
I think we'll have to, you can send these ideas later. Yeah.
That's what it takes.
Yeah.
So over to you for the closing remarks.
So this was a good roundtable. We got a flavor of the vast range of issues around the sector and so on. As a department, we look at all of these issues. I return to the theme of this one, which was about strategy. It was not so much about industry as such. Of course, reform is and having policy initiatives is a part of promoting industry and enabling it to grow. Strategy is about more than that. Strategy is about where we are positioned and what choices we make in terms of the directions we take, the way we structure and arrange our things. It's a macro level thing. It's not a micro level thing where we do particular fixing in a reform based approach. So that's a job which is to be done. Strategy is something at a much larger level, at a much higher level. Which direction do I go? What do I prioritize? How do I think? Those kinds of things. So I'll return to that. The focus here is on strategy. A key point which was made and IPA mentioned that is about data. We are very weak on data. What we really need is we need comparative information. A lot of you piecemeal tell me, including in this forum and outside it repeatedly, now it's been 6 months, 5 months. And I request also, we ultimately, even from associations, we don't get back with that detailed comparative analysis. The only effective way to deal with things in policy making and decisions and strategy is to simply let the facts speak for themselves. Speaking with passion or emotion is not going to lead you anywhere. You want to make a point about regulation, about clinical trials, about financing incentives, say in insurance or capital markets or wherever, or that drugs should be, medical devices are regulated differently elsewhere, or that excipient should not be treated as drugs, a point not made today but made earlier, but in India it's treated as an equivalent of drug. The effective way to really do it for strategic purposes is to actually do a comparative thing. Here is the number, and comparison is always on two things. One is the substantive provision, the other is its working, the operational working, the turnaround times, the processes it takes, and so on. The facts speak for themselves. The second thing is to put out those facts in a neutral and independent manner in the public domain to socialize the ideas, and not just confine it to stakeholder groups representing to decision makers. For that, you have to institutionalize it. It's one thing for you to go as an association, give a representation in a ministry or a particular authority or body. It's another thing that there is transparent data which is analyzed by experts who publish independently, not just as mouthpieces of particular industry interests. And they put it. I mean, there is an absence of think tanks and centers of research in regulatory affairs, policy matters. There are other sectors where these things exist. I mean, for example, I am Ahmedabad as a center, I recall, for telecom. Right? I mean, telecom policy. So they come out with things. In other sectors also you'll find it that they also have a center on regulatory affairs. Well, where do I find comparative information, or for that matter, look at pharma. Pharma is, and notwithstanding the whatever Mr. Nath said, I do expect the exports from India and medical devices to continue to grow for a variety of reasons. So increasingly, even in this, we'll have interest. Pharma is more than 50% of my production is exports. So the bigger market is outside India. So we are equally concerned with regulatory benchmarking and other benchmarking in other countries. And when we engage in discussions on both trade and investment with them, they compare our regulatory systems with theirs. So we have to be aware of what they have. We don't know. Our industry also does not know. When we consult you are unable to tell us specifically, or to tell us many things which on closer examination turn out not to be correct. So this is not a one-off need. This is a continuing need, and this will continue to be so. It's not one single study commissioned through some big consulting, as occasionally I find some of the associations coming out singly or jointly with studies. That will not do. What you actually need is to anchor a systematic study. Now there are two kinds of things here. One kind of thing would be for the sector as a whole, for the government to be able to think. If one is engaged in strategic decision making, one needs information, comparative information, data, a little bit of legwork, research work to quickly assess what is there. Today, frankly, as a department, I don't have the tools, neither do the associations which represent the industry interests, and there are no organizations in the country which are engaged in this on a continuing basis. So we are forced to take policy decisions and strategic decisions in the absence of any systematic study and inputs. This is not a good situation for a sector of this size and this significance and potential. So this is, like Invest India, how did it really come up? Invest India came up, the arrangement was that it was anchored with DEP as an independent structure and industry contributed, and there was an agency available which would put together data quickly, commission other studies and so on. That's one part of it, one way of this. The other is, of course, government will need studies and information for its purposes. Industry may have its own independent purposes, and at times they may need to compare and contrast, I won't say critique, policies, as I said, both domestic and international. We have to at times, say also in any negotiations that we are engaged in, we have to defend our own case also, and then we have to also ask for all the non-trade kind of barriers, non-tariff kind of barriers which are there, technical barriers which are there. We don't have a specific information of other jurisdictions. So there is, I think industry too needs to think in terms of an independent either centers of research or think tanks or both, which the industry supports, but they are actually independent. Like I said, the Ahmedabad centers, they are independent. They have their own credibility when they come out with something. They are not government, because there are many things government will not say for its own, because governments we have to take a considered view until a decision is taken. We cannot say what we say. Whatever is the extent, nobody in the government is. So I think there is a space for both kinds of things. Unless you have those kinds of things, you don't have the instruments in place to have a really policy dialogue. You can have criticism, you can have opinions, you can have suggestions, but you will not have systematic policy making, you will not have systematic strategy making, and those are institutional requirements. A whole bunch of very valuable ideas have come in. Policies, when I say by strategy, I mean things like what Mr. Jain said about what is our thought process as an industry on minimum import price, right? In which circumstances and what consideration should we invoke? Can we have some kind of an industry consensus? Because there's always an upstream industry and there's a downstream industry and there's a winners and losers. As a direction, what it is there. If you devise your industry strategy or sectoral strategy, diverse from the wider strategy which is happening, playing out in the world, you are adopting a high risk business strategy. Because the larger environment will have its own compulsions, and those will have to be addressed. So merely being reactive or to borrow not a very nice phrase, lobbying with the government for a particular point of view will not take things too far. There is a larger context which will shape things. Now in that larger context, what is my strategic positioning for the longer haul? What is recognizing the strategy consideration and then saying, okay, here we will move. It can't only be here we are and we must stay here, or we want this or that or the other. So that I come back to the point that industry needs to think strategically, equip itself strategically. The department and industry perhaps put together, equip jointly strategically for inputs and continuing studies, and so too industry could independently do so. And as I said, this has to be a part of a process. The particular points that have been set up, they've been taken note of. We look at those to the best we can. Many of them lie outside our department. Many of them lie with the department, but nevertheless, as a sector, we will look at those. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary. It has been extremely helpful. I'm sure all of us here would agree with that. And I think without much ado, this has been a 2-hour session. And even that seemed very little. I think we can continue for a few more hours and still all the issues won't be put onto the table. So we'll look forward to all the issues being brought in. And subsequently, I think there were many suggestions that the Secretary gave to those who are on this table today. I'm sure you will evolve some mechanism to ensure that there is a much more proactive manner in which industry and government can collaborate. So with that, we'll close the session. Thank you to each one of you for taking the time to be here. There's a little memento, sir, that we'd like to give to you. Just one more thing.
question may to give this to you.
So, also going to make an announcement. There is some VIP movement happening.
So there is a VIP movement happening right in front of the road, in front of the CC. So if in case your car is parked outside, please let your driver or anyone move the car away from the road because they will be told away because PM is going to cross the lane within half an hour. So we just got this information, so we just share what to be okay.
You can move away. You can talk to
Yes.